All right, we are fired up to welcome on to Theater and College Hoops, a 4-year player for Kent State and now serving as an assistant coach at his alma mater, hailing from Fishers, Indiana. We got Jon Fleming. Jon, how are you? Thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks. I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited about the conversation. So
I am too. Hey, how is the off season going? Have you been able to take a breath since your tourney berth just like a month and a half ago, approaching 2 months?
Right. Yeah, definitely. I think right after the season, my answer to that would be no. Obviously, like everyone else, we hit the portal. As great as making the tournament is, it also kind of means you're a week behind and all that stuff. Not to be too Nick Saban-y, but so yeah, we had two guys to sign, got them signed in kind of late April as far as getting it all done. And now we've kind of just been hanging out in May, trying to figure out, our guys are away from campus for a couple weeks. I really believe that break's important for them. I obviously want them to go work, but I think a mental break for them is good in May, go home, see their family, do whatever they need to do. And it allows us kind of a chance as a coaching staff to reset and look at what we have coming back and what we need to do for the upcoming season.
Well, just in general, the portal has added, like you had mentioned, that additional work that you guys got to do. And it's so crazy having your player perspective. You were a player when the portal wasn't as hot as it is today, right? I mean, is it kind of crazy seeing that dichotomy and that difference now?
Yeah, I think, the main difference, obviously the portal existed when I played, but you had to sit out a year when you left. So it was much less enticing to leave. NIL's different things now, throws everything, with it, whether, regardless of how you feel about that, the reality of that is made the landscape different. At the end of the day, it's our job as coaches to adjust to the rules and how it works. So, it's what we'll do and it's what everybody has to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to get into all of your playing and coaching journey and everything Kent State hoops, which I'm really excited to do. But just in addition to, talking about the off season here, what have you personally been doing? Do you like to try and remove yourself from the game a little bit? Or are you watching NBA playoffs? Have you been keeping up with the draft combine that's going on with some players that you're probably familiar with? Take us through what Jon Fleming's doing.
Yeah, that's a good question. I try to take myself away from it. But I'm sure like everyone else, it's also a chance to kind of step back and enjoy basketball as far as, when you're removed from the NBA playoffs, you're removed from the combine, it's more enjoyable to follow those things because you have no stake in it. We have a kid, Sincere Carey, that's kind of going through a bit of the draft process right now, along with Malik Jacobs and Myron Thomas, as far as trying to get them some workouts. So maybe paying a little bit more attention to it this year, just because I feel like we kind of had, Sincere and some of those guys have a chance at, doing some things at that next level. I actually really enjoy, this is actually when I start watching the NBA, not even necessarily because I have a problem with NBA basketball, but I'm free. These guys, I was watching the Boston-Miami game last night and watching how hard those guys play, like at that level. It's pretty special for how talented they are. And, obviously, everyone, NBA defense, whatever your opinion on that is, like these guys definitely have another level when it comes to right now. So it's fun to watch. So that's kind of what I basketball wise have been doing. Other than that, I like hanging out, just like anyone else, nothing crazy.
There you go, Jon. I'm going to unpack that answer. Very detailed. I appreciate it. But let me unpack a few things. First of all, the defense perspective, you're way too kind. I'm going to trust your eye because you've been around the game for so long. But for me, I cannot stand when it's usually the old heads basically saying there's no defense being played. And I'm out here like, when in the world could you guard a guy like Anthony Davis, or when did you have to guard a guy like Anthony Davis who gets it done on the defensive end, but can also stretch the floor and hit a elbow jumper, a 3-point shot? It's like, I don't think you understand how wildly great the shot making is.
Yeah. The offense in the NBA, is at an all-time high as far as players' skill level, the way the game's played, as far as, the ball movement, things like that. So I'm with you. These guys are playing defense, 82 games a year. At the end of the day, what I see, like, there was 4 loose balls in 3 minutes, and I felt like last night everyone was on the floor on every one of them, and And that's what I think kind of gets ramped up, when I really watch the game. Like, they're not letting those 50-50 balls go anymore, because it matters. Those guys, they have, even though it's a 7-game series, you see the Boston, you feel like these swings, a loose ball to a kick ahead layup three, like it's just, they're big swings in these games. And I think that those players understand that at this point of the year, and they're, they adjust to things like that. But I'm with you. I mean, you watch like, Joker and Anthony Davis, they had 40 on each other. You know what I mean? So like, to say that either one of them wasn't playing defense is wild. But yeah, I think it's just, the game's faster. There's a lot of things that come into play with it. But yeah, I definitely think the NBA, they're out there. They're not just letting anybody score.
It's tough, man. I think a few years back when KD was on the Warriors and they were interviewing, I believe it was Pat Bev and Lou Williams. I could be getting this mixed up on the Clippers. Someone asked him about defending KD, and they're like, "I'm trying, man." That's Kevin Durant.
Yeah, and no three in the key. I think that's a rule that people don't understand. Not understand, but if you don't, college, you can constantly have a help side defender in that lane and funnel them in. You know what I mean? Like, almost every college defense is predicated on that. Whether you're forcing baseline, middle, it's predicated on having someone there, where those NBA guys, like, they can't just sit there. So it's a lot more, you have to guard Kevin Durant, and good luck. You know what I mean? So I think that's a rule of the game. Obviously the NBA wants it that way. I understand what they're trying to do, but it's a distinct difference that I think defensively really changes the game at that level. So
yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about you now, Jon. I'm very fascinated and curious to know your personal journey, not only with playing, but also coaching. I truly find it very important that we highlight some of the assistant coaches on these different staffs and the legwork that they do to get at Kent State to the NCAA tournament. But let's start, Jon, with your playing days. All right. Fishers, Indiana. I'm very curious to know, was there a recruiting process for you? What was it like for you out of high school and the decision you're trying to make?
As far as my playing career, I wish I had a little more drama for you. I was a preferred walk-on here at Kent. So as far as my recruiting process, it kind of went, I was a Division III NAIA kid, and kind of got to the point where I was looking, and, I'm a very competitive person. So, I understood why I wasn't a Division I player, but I wanted to try to compete on that level. So I had some walk-on opportunities. My assistant coach at Fishers High School knew Eric Hout, who was on staff here at Kent State, also played at Kent State here. And so they had gotten in contact, and I just felt like it was a good fit to go. I met with Coach Senderoff, and I felt like, everyone treats walk-ons differently. And I don't think there's a wrong way to do it, but the way that he presented that they would treat me was basically, look, like, I'm going to be harder on you. I expect more from you, and if you earn your way to playing, great. If not, you can still be an important part of this program. So kind of when I heard that, I wasn't just going to be holding a pad or sitting on the side. Like, if anything, I got more reps than everyone because I was, trying to give people breaks and things like that. So after talking to him, it just felt like a really good fit. I respect Division III and NAIA basketball. There's nothing wrong with it. It just, for me, in all honesty, I just kind of wanted to see, when the dust settled, where I stood against, the best. And that's just kind of how I approached it and why I ultimately decided to walk on. So
makes sense. Tell us about the first time you met Coach Senderoff.
Yeah. So it was pretty brief, honestly. The first time I met him, I came up here, I guess on a visit, you could say. I think the one thing about being a walk-on is it's a stressful thing in that you wait, so my mom was freaking out. I hadn't picked a school, and, late May, every high schooler, they're having their open house, telling everyone where they're going and all this. And I was like, I don't know yet. So I appreciate my parents being patient with me. But I came up here with my dad. I watched him work out. DeAndre Haynes worked out the guards. He's now one of my best friends and mentors, someone I grew close with here. Also played at Kent. We'll talk more about that. You'll see the pattern of people playing at Kent and becoming coaches. But I met with Coach Sendy, and he kind of talked about, if you decide to come here, and I was like, Coach, I want to come here. And he was like, all right, well, that makes this a lot less dramatic. Kind of, I'll see you in a week or two. So I came up here, packed all my stuff up in a week. My dad drove me back up here and just kind of plopped me in halfway through summer workouts, and I had to fend for myself. So it was, looking back, it sounds crazier when I say it out loud that I just, showed up and jumped in everything, but it was really good for me to just get thrown in the fire and kind of have to learn as I go. So
Yeah, it sounds like a decision that has paid incredible dividends, especially sitting where you are today as an assistant coach, right? And I'm always curious to know, Jon, the transition, right? So I've spoken with players that have played in the NBA, pro, whether it be in Europe, obviously in college, high level Division I college basketball versus high school. You wanted to see where you stood up against, maybe high school versus D3 to Kent State. Tell us a little bit about that transition, maybe that first couple practices, in your thought process.
Yeah, so I think, as we dive into talking about Kent State basketball in general, I didn't know it at the time, but one of the things that really fit with just my personality in general was the competitiveness of the program. People ask, what's special about you guys? We keep score of everything. There's not a drill we do that, there's not a winner and a loser and someone on the line. And so I really enjoyed that. As far as the transition, I think immediately what jumps out to me and a lot of freshmen was I needed to put on muscle. So I think I gained like 10 pounds my first year here, just because playing, getting bumped off your line, I still tell freshmen, like, that's just going to be an adjustment that needs to be made. Not many people come in, with the college ready body. I think that where I had the advantage was just kind of mentally, I was ready as far as understanding the game. Being from Indiana, I tell people all the time, like, I don't think we have better basketball players that come from Indiana. New York has a bunch of talent, North Carolina, Texas, Florida, everywhere. But from the time you're a kid to the time you're in high school, the things that are taught to you, are kind of at a different level, in my opinion. And I didn't notice that until I was removed from it, in all honesty, and saw other basketball and, the other freshmen that were alongside of me struggle. I was struggling with 1,000 things, I was strength and just being good enough. But as far as understanding what we were trying to do offensively and scheme wise, like, I got it right away. So I think, that was a transition that didn't, hurt me. I think, like I said, just figuring out that I tell people this story all the time. We had our first practice. We took the foreign tour. So it was part of the reason I came in the summer was because I was hoping I'd get a chance to play more than I was ever going to in the season on this foreign tour. So we had our first practice, and, when I say we keep score, Coach Sendy had this whole metric system of offensive rebounds +3, assists +2, turnover -4. And the first day, I was a freshman. I'm nervous. I'm whatever. I remember I was horrible. And they ranked it and they put it on the board after every practice, right? Every practice. So that day I was last. I don't remember my score, but I was last by, a pretty good amount. And I remember going home that night, like, dang, like, I really wanted to prove I could do this, that, and the other. Like, I was worried about missing shots and all that. And I was like, tomorrow, whatever I do, like, I'm not going to be last, and I'm not going to worry about how I play and all this. I'm just going to do everything. And that day I was like the highest. I went from last to first +10, you know what I mean? So by anybody. And, I think it shows anybody, scoring is only one thing. I was not as talented, nor was I ever going to be as talented as anyone else, but I could make up for things by playing hard. And ultimately, the good thing about that is, as a walk-on, it shows other people that, like, if he can do that, well, then I have to hold you accountable to that because you're more talented than him. So if you do it, that's tenfold. So I was lucky enough to learn that lesson in 2 days. I think it takes some freshmen a lot longer to learn that. But like I said, I was a guy never competing for heavy minutes or anything, but I really enjoyed the process. I think, people always ask me, why did you stay? You could have went D2 and played more and this, that, and the other. And, I always go back to my ultimate decision was I wanted to know where I stood when the dust settled, as well as the fact that Coach Senderoff and his staff treated me and held me accountable like everyone else. If I didn't feel like I was being held accountable that way, I probably would have left. But every offseason I came in, I had a conversation in a meeting like everyone else with him. I told him, hey, look, I want to play. And he always told me like, hey, look, I get it. Here's some things you need to work on. I did my best to work on them. DeAndre Haynes, Eric Howe, they took just as much time in trying to develop me as they did our best player. And I really appreciated that. Obviously, it's something you have to earn as a walk-on. You know, you have to show them that you want that. But the way I was treated as a walk-on here, I never wanted to leave. You know, I knew that they were going to maximize my potential. And if it wasn't enough, then, you know, it wasn't enough. That's life. You know, at the end of the day, some people are better at things than others. And, you know, I just really enjoyed being around everybody and the process and competitiveness and the culture of the program. So it's ultimately, you know, people say you made a great decision staying because you knew you were going to coach. Like, and honestly, I didn't know I was going to coach. I just really enjoyed, you know, how I was treated and, you know, the competitiveness. And when we practice, like, yeah, I didn't play in games, but every drill was live, you know what I mean, that we do. So like, I got to play basketball. It's not like I was just standing on the sides. And, you know, some people don't treat walk-ons like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I understand everybody has to divvy it up. At the end of the day, I probably was taking reps for people, and they were probably complaining about it, but you know, competitiveness is what you preach. And so they lived with it. And, you know, I'm really, really happy with my decision to stay, not only for obviously coaching, great decision to stay, but I was happy as a player. You know, when I look back, like I never, you know, I'm glad I stayed and stuck it out because I had a blast. So
yeah, you talk a lot about process, and you talked a little bit about some people asking you why didn't you leave? You could have gone D2, but you stuck around, and that culminated, John, in an NCAA tournament berth. There's not a lot of folks that can say they've been to the NCAA tournament. Also, you played in the NCAA tournament game.
yeah.
We got to go story time.
Okay.
UCLA. That's who you
Yeah.
guys played against, right? We're talking Lonzo Ball, TJ Leaf. Can you take us behind the curtain into some of those practices, that prep? What was it like preparing for that up tempo? I mean, I left out Bryce Alford, who was terrific.
Yeah.
That really good UCLA team.
I think there was, if I'm not, I'd have to go back and look. I think there was 6 guys that at some point put on an NBA jersey on that team. And I think you said it, and it's very easy to say up tempo, and it's completely different when you're watching it. The athletes that they had combined with Lonzo Ball's ability, you know, people always ask me, because True Holidays actually had a great NBA career. And when you look back at the box score, he's who killed us. Because Lonzo Ball only played the first half, but
Was it Drew or was it Aaron?
Aaron Holiday. You're
Okay.
right. Aaron Holiday.
That caught me by surprise.
Yeah. Aaron Holiday is the one that really hurt us. And he ended up, I don't think he was somebody that was supposed to play in the NBA a long time, but ended up, you know, by no surprise after I watched him. I think he had like 15 and 11 on us making it in the NBA. But Lonzo's ability to advance the ball, like just one dribble, and they ran their lanes well, but I think it really changes the dynamic of up tempo when you have a guard that can hit guys in stride and as quickly and as on point as the way he did. And, you know, a lot of people ask me after, like, what, you know, NBA prospect he is. And I said, well, one thing I know he can do is pass at that level, you know, because it was his vision, just, you know, it was so effortless. TJ Leaf hurt us. I think he hit some shots. But you don't really you don't understand when you're watching how quickly that ball is being advanced. And they ultimately, I think we cut it to 8 at one point, but I think they hung about 90 on us at the end of the day. And, you know, like you said, the up tempo, as far as the prep, you know, it's funny. We played Gonzaga this year, who's similar as far as kind of their tempo, unless they're, you know, getting it to Drew Timme, like, and we do a drill almost where, like, you know, kind of the old fashioned baseline touch drill where it's 5 and 5. And coach, because we played Gonzaga, I know he would have done this drill before we played UCLA. He puts like 2 people almost at half court, so that you're almost like you're behind already. So, you know, if you were looking for something, you know, a little drill or something, that's kind of how we do it. You know, he almost gives him more of an advantage than the typical, you throw it to a guy, he's got to touch the baseline. Like, yeah, you throw it to a guy, there's 3 on the baseline, but 2 guys are even advanced further, and those guys got to sprint back. So I think that's a drill that we would have brought out for them, that we've kind of incorporated into what we do now. But yeah, they were really good players. Like I said, at the end of the day, when 5 or 6 of them did, Bryce Alford, he's the one that I can't remember if he got a 2-way or something at some point, but I know at least 5 of them put on an NBA jersey. So pretty talented team when you look back at it.
Yeah, no, it's always interesting to hear these NCAA tournament stories, but you getting on the court when you saw Senderoff pull you in, or maybe it was an assistant coach, what was going through your head? Like, take us from the moment you see the sign to get up off the bench, you go to the scorer's table to check in, and you step on the court.
It's funny. It's actually like one of the least nervous I've ever been in that situation. Cause as a walk on, usually they throw you in with the minute and they want you to shoot 4 times, which just isn't me. I kind of am like a distributing point guard. So when everyone's like, get in and fire it, that throws me off. But I remember Jimmy Hall. I don't think I came in for him, but he was an unbelievable player, 3-time, first team all MAC selection. I was really close with him. Somebody that I, really worked with a lot. We played all 4 years together because he sat out my freshman year. He checked out, and I just remember giving him a hug. And we were both seniors on the team, and sending him off the right way. Us making the tournament kind of cemented his legacy. As great as it was for me to get in, I was really happy for him because he's one of the hardest working, best people, best players I know. As far as when I checked in, I hate to say I don't even remember it, but I think I came off a ball screen, threw it to someone, they missed a 3, and then I stole it at the other end from somebody. Like
That's
I said,
in the record book, baby.
Yeah, I don't even really remember as much as I remember, just kind of having Jimmy and Dion, Edwin, come off the court and getting to hug them for the last time, and just kind of soaking in your last moments, because it's a weird feeling of, we thought we could beat them, and kind of gave them a good run, cut it to 8 at one point, but also you all, to some extent, when you're a mid-major, making the tournament is what you all set out to do every year. So it was a really good moment. I'm glad I got to check in. I appreciate Coach Sendy checking me in, but if I wouldn't have, it wouldn't have ruined anything. So,
I mean, I think that speaks volume of your character, though, John.
Yeah, I appreciate
being happier for your teammates, and not just going out there jacking up shots when I wouldn't have even blamed you to do that, John. But
Yeah.
It's a tough end to a great career, and so you now have a decision to make, right? College is over. Take us through the decision-making process of, I want to pursue coaching now. I talk with a lot of players, and I think it is a difficult conversation for some people to say, what do I want to do next? Do I want to continue pursuing playing? Do I want to, I don't know, get a completely different job? Or how do I pursue this coaching thing? Take us through your mindset transitioning from player to coach.
Yeah, well, it was kind of one of those things where people always told me like, hey, you'll make a great coach. And I didn't really know what that meant. I guess because they thought I had a high IQ of the game and, talked to people well. I think kind of like my sophomore or junior year is when I made the decision like, hey, whenever I'm done, I'd like to try it. DeAndre Haynes is I mentioned, he's an assistant at Marquette now, one of my close friends and mentors. We had a lot of conversations about it, and why he thought I would be good, as well as Eric Hout, another one of my mentors. And so I guess in a way, like, I wasn't necessarily focused on it as a player, but I had the voice with the team that, I was on the bench, and I talked to these guys all the time. I practice with them every day. And so the relationships I created with them, when you're not playing, you're talking to them every huddle, everything. And it kind of just, I hate to say, naturally happened. Coach Senderoff and I had honestly talked about it before my senior year. So I knew I was going to come back and be a GA before the season started. I hadn't really thought about it just because I was trying to enjoy my last year playing. But yeah, I mean, Coach Sendy, he put me right to work. We got back and he was like, all right, you're a GA now. Like, you can work these guys out, let's get it rolling. And I started coming in the office. I think I took like a week or 2 break just because he told me to. And then I kind of started learning the ropes. Akeem Misdean, who is now an assistant at Georgia, was an assistant at the time. Eric Hout was an assistant at the time, and they did a great job really showing me the basics and how recruiting is and molding me. I think that's one thing, with Kent State, like outside of Duke, I think we have probably the strongest coaching tree of any school. Randall Holt and Julian Sellinger, our assistants, played here currently. So all three assistants that Coach Senderoff has played at Kent State. Jim Christian, who was a coach at Boston College, TCU, Ohio, he's our special assistant to the head coach right now. Eric Hout's an associate head coach in Northern Kentucky. DeAndre Haynes is at Marquette. Akeem Misdean is at Georgia. Jordan Mincy is a player here. He's a head coach at Jacksonville. So, Jalen Avery's an assistant coach at Stony Brook. He's one of my best friends I played with. Like, we have a pretty crazy tree when you look at it. And it's something special about Kent. So I was blessed to be around a lot of good people, not only be coached by them, but be mentored by them as I shifted. So, I accredit a lot of my success to them.
Absolutely. And so part of your success is player development. I want our theater goers here. I want our listeners to know that Jon here is a player development guru. So I want to get into that, Jon, a little bit. All right. What's your playbook? All right. Do you have a certain set of criteria when it comes to player development? Do you have a certain set of criteria you need the player to meet? Take us through some of the real nitty gritty details of what you consider to be non-negotiables, absolute must-haves in player development from your perspective, and also the player you're trying to develop's perspective.
Right. Well, I think I start every conversation with a player that comes and tells me, hey, I want to get better, do whatever. Like, I am only here to guide you. How good you want to be is up to you. If you think that the time you spend with me is enough, you're probably wrong. You have to want this. And every successful player that I've had and worked with has been a tremendous worker. So I think just to start, when you talk about player development, like, you can only give a player so much. They have to want the rest of it. And I think that's one of the biggest keys to success when people talk to me about, the players I've worked with, and to me, the credit's to them. I don't do anything super crazy. I'll walk you through, kind of the way I look at things, but just as a start point, like, Sincere Carey, our point guard this year, was one of the hardest workers I've ever seen. He's a machine.
What a season he had, man.
Yeah. And it's all from the time it ended. He went through the NBA process and got the feedback. He went down to Houston to train with Aaron Miller, a guy who's I think he Pat Beverly and a lot of players he trains with. I actually took a week off just to go watch him, just because I wanted to see what they did, what's different, and how he approaches it from an NBA perspective, I guess, with guys. And, Sin twice a day, I couldn't get away from him, for lack of better terms. And he's just one example of the way you work is, it's on them at the end of the day. You're just a guide. How good they want to be is up to them. So I think as far as the way I attack it, there's two types of player development. There's player development when you're in season playing games, and there's player development in the off season. I think in season's pretty simple. I look at it this way. You take a guy like Sincere, who's playing a lot of your minutes, a lot of your shots. I don't do a lot of new things with him during the season. We shoot the shots he's going to shoot 20 times in games, stand still catching threes, pull-ups. What are the spots that you like to get to? We're going to rep those out every day, because at the end of the day, when the shot clock's winding down, here's what you're going to do. And we drill it over and over again, and it becomes pretty simple, because those are the shots he's going to take. You look at guys that may not be playing as much, 5 to 10 minute game of guys. Like, they're the guys that I think need to be trying to add maybe one thing. I'm pretty big on, you can't try to expand your game in 10 different ways all at once. If you want to become a better shooter, that's what you need to focus on. I think Magic Johnson said, like, each offseason I would pick one or two things to try to improve on. And that's really, if you're really trying to make drastic improvements in an area, that's how it needs to be, because if you're trying to improve ball handling, shooting off the dribble, all these things, like you're only just going to averagely get better at everything because you're spending, not enough time on one thing. So in season guys that aren't playing as much as probably they would like, everyone wants to play 35 minutes and shoot all the shots. That's the way it is. But, what's one thing that will directly not only help you, but help our team? You know what I mean? Like if there's a guy coming off the bench and he's an okay 3-point shooter, well, let's get him 250, 300 makes a day. It makes him better. And if he can come in and make a shot, it makes our team better, which coach will like you and you'll play more. Everyone's happy, So as far as in season, I keep it simple with that. In the off season, the way that I like to approach it is this, because I think it's important that the players have some sort of say in what they're trying to develop. I usually like to, meet with them and say, hey, what are you, this off season, what are your focuses? Like if you could pick, they usually name 6 to 8 things, which is ridiculous. So
are you responsible for saying that? We got a silo there.
My next conversation is, okay, well, what out of these 6 to 8, which 2, 1, do you think would drastically help you as a player just next year? And what do you think is the most obtainable? Meaning, if our center comes in and wants to improve his ball handling, does that really help you? You know what I mean? Like, does that really help you as a player? I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm not saying you don't do any ball handling. I'm just saying that, to focus an entire year on, ball handling, when at the end of the day, you're going to have your back to the basket every time you touch it, it's wasted time. So, touch around the rim for a big guy, 2 or 3 specific things and goals. And really, because it gives them, you're essentially trying to make them say what they need. And so that they feel like they haven't invested and you're doing what they say as well.
You don't want Muggsy Bogues coming to you in the offseason saying, I want to work on shot blocking, right?
Yeah. So, and it's honestly, it's usually pretty easy with guards because it's fun to be a guard. That's just the way it is. It's the wings and bigs that are like, I want to come in and work on my combo moves. Like, well, you're a wing, like, and you should probably be working off. If you're a wing in college and you can rip and get by someone and rip and change when they cut you off, you're pretty good. That's really all you need, like at our level or any level. As long as you're a good athlete, you can finish and things like that. So that's kind of how I get them to, hey, this is what we need to work on. And then I try to create a plan. Usually, the way we do it at Kent, we're really heavy with player development in the summer. We get them 4 times a week for 45 minutes with skill development. And then that leaves with our hours, 2 30-minute workouts where they can come in and just grab us whenever. That gets you your 4 hours in the summer, 40 minutes, not 45 minutes, excuse me. So that's the way we do it. When you look at that, you should be working out 4 to 6 times a week, once again, depending on how much you want it. And I'm a pretty big believer that, like, at the end of the day, you should be able to come in and make 300 shots on your own without me. So if I'm spending my time with you, it shouldn't just be me sitting there. We should be working on something, and you should come in and make 300 shots on your own. Like, you don't, we have managers. You don't need me for that. That should be, we have guns, things like that. So, when I talk about that, that's kind of how I like to do it. And, as far as the way I structure a workout, I usually, for whatever reason, start skill-based and move it into game situations. So when I say that, I mean, I'll do a finishing drill with guards. Let's just say I have a point guard, for example. We start every time ball handling, passing, finishing, some types of off the dribble shots that he shoots a lot, or maybe in the off season that we're trying to get better at. This off season, we were really trying to expand his range due to him hopefully having some NBA looks. So we'd get a lot of reps of that. And then we'd put him in situations, handoffs, pick and rolls, certain fades that the situations, now we're applying the skill to a game situation. So a lot of, to me, the argument in skill development is like, this is skill based and this is like, that's not game like. And like, people like, where are you at with it? And I'm like, I think both help you. I think that, two ball handling can help you. I think that coming off a pin down in a game situation can help you. I think the way that you incorporate it, who you apply it to, it is really the important thing. So that's kind of the way I look at it. I could probably talk about this forever, but to me, as far as the basics of it, like that's how I like to approach it on a general standpoint.
No, it's a great deep dive, and I really appreciate that detail. It's brilliant, honestly. I'm curious to know though, if we look at the off-season player development, because I think that you had identified that as a bigger challenge than in-season development. But within that off-season player development, what is the biggest challenge that you see or that you try and overcome? Because I know you said essentially along the lines of you got to want it more than I do. Right. Is that the biggest challenge, or are there other bigger challenges that you're seeing?
I guess to me, a quick answer is yes, that's the biggest challenge. But if that's your challenge, that's on you. You know what I mean? Like there's only so much. If that's your challenge, then we need to start thinking about bringing someone else in. At least that's the way we think, because at Kent State, like we don't always get, the most skilled, all that, but we get the hardest working and most competitive in our mind. So if we see your work as as an issue, like that's an issue to us. That's not something we overlook. I think the other thing with that is boredom. And I know that sounds weird, but at the end of the day, like people talk about Ray Allen and like, I watched a clip of JJ Redick and how he did the same thing all the time, over and over and over and over. And it's different when you're in the NBA because JJ Redick knows he's in the NBA to run around and shoot threes. And at the end of the day, he doesn't need to get, that's what he's going to do. So, but those guys' ability to lock in on the same things and be very detail oriented on the same concepts over and over is difficult for 18 to 22-year-olds. That's where I feel like a coach or, you come in and you step in and try to help them. And I say this, to me, the most important thing, at least at our level with player development, is you develop a relationship with the player. I think that, if in a tie game with 4 minutes left and everyone's emotions are high, if you as a coach are going to have to be able to sit someone down and say, hey man, like, settle down, get to your shots, you're pressing this, that, and the other, there has to be weeks, months of trust built. And to me, player development is where you build that trust. Look at all these guys in the NBA. The first thing they do when they play bad, they call Drew Hanlon or whoever their guy is, and they fly him out, and they're getting extra shots with him. And it's because they trust his process, his words. And I know because I watched, Drew Hanlon is kind of, the guru of this in the NBA. Like he talks to their coaches and he's telling them the same things. We all know that. But they have the ultimate level of trust in him. And I think at the college level, that's really where you build that. And, not only is it beneficial for you as a coach, but it's also what makes what we do special. Like it's why you end up loving all these kids and understanding them from a different perspective. And, the amount of conversations I've had with kids, after a workout about nothing to do with basketball and their life is, kind of what makes it special. So it's also why I'm so passionate about it and why I think it's important. Other than you get people better, great. You also develop a relationship. So when it's time to hold them accountable, tell them something, just be there for them. They have a certain level of trust in you that can take it a long way. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Drew Hanlon. That's a great example. I wonder how he was feeling during that Sixers Celtics Game 7 with Joel Embiid and JT. He had to have been.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, let's take it back now, though, John, to last season. All right. Terrific season. I first want to focus on the schedule because that's a gauntlet, man, not just for a mid-major team, but let me refresh some people's memories. Northern Kentucky tournament team. College of Charleston, not only a tournament team, I think they were like a 3-loss team on the season.
Yeah.
Houston, #1 overall seed. And the Zags, who went to yet another Sweet 16. All right. I mean, that is a gauntlet. And might I add, and I'm not trying to bring up bad memories. In my estimation, you probably should have beat Houston and Gonzaga. I think you could have.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about how that prepared you and I mean, in the moment, it's probably frustrating as hell, difficult challenges, but then you see yourself on CBS Selection Sunday, you've made it, right? You're conference tournament champions. Tell us a little bit about what went into the scheduling, probably around this time last year, and going through that gauntlet of a schedule.
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying Coach Senderoff unfortunately gets the stress of that more than us. I think the hard thing that we're seeing after the result of this, us competing at that level, as well as us returning Sincere Carey and Malik Jacobs, adding Myron Thomas and having just our core back from the year before when we lost in the MAC championship, is nobody wanted to play us. It's hard to get by games. It was hard to get anybody to schedule you. Just because generally speaking, all you do is look it up and you're like, well, the player of the year is back. Well, first team all defense is back with, multiple, with, triple double games and things like that. They added an 11-point game score from someone in conference. And then they have a great young core that, we got Chris Payton to transfer in. He was great for us. Jalen Sullinger came along, Claron Hornbeak came along. So I'll start by saying it's not easy to put together a schedule in general. I think that, the thought process behind it, Coach Hout and Coach Horn at Northern Kentucky are really good friends of ours, go back a long time. So we both knew each other would be good. And we're like, hey, well, let's at least play somebody we know and we can bounce ideas off of after that we're close with. College of Charleston kind of just happened. I don't know where they were ranked in preseason polls, but they had a lot of newness and Pat Kelsey did a great job with them. I don't think
they were not ranked at all. Like, it took a meteoric rise for people to be
right.
like, they should be ranked 20th, right? And they ended up
that was my scout for a first year assistant. So I appreciate it, Coach Kelsey, you guys being so good. And preparing for them after they had just beat Virginia Tech and won their own tournament, so Malik Jacobs was from North Carolina. We were honestly just trying to get a game back close to home for him, which of course ended up being, a top 25 team after all said and done on the road. And then we flew to Houston. And Coach Sampson and Coach Senderoff are good friends, have a relationship. And then I think Gonzaga just kind of happened. So we ask a lot of high majors to buy us. They wouldn't. Ask a lot again to buy us this year, and they wouldn't. So as far as, planning it, it's just kind of whoever agrees to play you at times. So as far as how it prepared us, I think what it did, and not necessarily that we, did a great job executing it against Indiana, but playing like Drew Timme, and then you draw Trace Jackson Davis. You play.
That's a great point. Wow.
Yeah, like you play the bigs from Houston, who I think Jarace Walker is a top 15 projected pick. I look at the boards a little bit, but like bigs like that, going into environments, Gonzaga, Houston, College of Charleston was one of the toughest environments that we played in today, or this year. Just, they've got a great fan base and things like that. Northern Kentucky, a great team, that ended up winning the Horizon League. So it prepares you, like you said, it's hard in the moment, right? Especially when you feel like, in all honesty, you look back and a couple mistakes, couple shots, you look like, maybe you could have beat Gonzaga or Houston or Charleston. All of them came down to basically one possession. It's tough, but I think our guys, and as coaches, I can't take the credit for this, our guys' response and ability to learn and grow from those moments and not get discouraged from them is why we ultimately had the season that we had. When you go look at a conference tournament game, Toledo cuts it to 6 with 12 minutes left. You got to respond. Same way Gonzaga cut it, and Akron, you're in a heated rivalry game with them in the semifinals. It's back and forth. Eugene Freeman, who's when you talk about good bigs, if Freeman from Akron isn't on your list, this year he should be, because he is Drew Timme and Trace Jackson Davis are unbelievable. Freeman's, he's another big that we had to face and someone we had to go through. So playing Timme, preparing us, for him. At the end of the day, you're just trying to get ready for conference play, and you can get caught up in the wins and losses, and it's very easy to. And we do, in all honesty, like it was not like we were like, oh, well, we almost beat them, whatever, we were upset, but it did a great job of preparing our guys because they responded the right way. And I give sincere Carey, Malik, Myron, and the rest of our team, those are being our leaders. Their response to those losses is, to me, why we had success more than anything we did as coaches.
100%. John, I'm just looking down at my phone. It might be a little bit longer. I'm trying to find the tweet. I know I sent out a tweet after that Houston game about how impressed I was with Kent State. So
Yeah.
I'll try and find that at some point. But let me go back to, again, last year. And you mentioned TJD, but you're also an Indiana kid. Okay.
Yeah.
Selection Sunday, Greg Gumbel says
Yeah.
Kent State's going to be playing Indiana or vice versa. When you see the Hoosiers come up as your opponent, what's going through your mind?
Yeah. So my dad, he went to IU too. So, generally speaking, he was an IU fan. It was great. I know Brian Walsh on their staff pretty well too. So it would have been great whoever we played. It was nice to get a crack at them. I would have liked to beat them, but they have a great team. Coach Woodson's doing a great job over there with Coach Walsh and the rest of their staff. Coach Hunter, a longtime assistant that's done a great job, been around. Like it was special, but at the end of the day, like you got to turn that off and go try to beat them. So, it was a great opportunity. And yeah, it was a great moment in general. So
yeah, absolutely. So let's look forward here now to this upcoming season. If you're to provide us a mantra or a one-liner or maybe even just one word about what this team is going to be known for heading into the season, are you able to do that, or is it still too early here? Are you still trying to develop what you want to be this upcoming season?
Yeah, the formula I said it, at the beginning, talking about myself, like compete, man. Like I said, there's not a drill that we do in practice where there's not a score being taken, whether it's a one-on-one drill, baseline touch, and Coach Sinderoff does a great job. And it's just been, kind of what this program has been about the last 20 years. Like we may not be the most talented. We may not shoot the ball the best, we may not do all these things, but you're going to get our best shot every night. If you're playing Kent State, we're going to be tough. We're going to compete. And when people, in college basketball, you don't let people in a lot, just as far as your program, as you're preparing and things like that. But, there's always someone that stops by. I remember the head coach at Niagara now who played at Duke.
Greg Paulus?
Yeah, Greg Paulus stopped by one. People stop in and they always are like, man, like you guys compete. And it is like that's our mantra every year. The players change, the jerseys change, all that. But at the end of the day, like that's what we want to be about. And that's what we'll always try to instill in our guys. And if that standard's not met, like it's the beauty of having 3 former players on there. Like sometimes Coach Sendy doesn't even have to step in because we get more upset than him. So yeah, if you gave me one word, if you asked me in 10 years, I'd tell you the word would be the same. So
it sounds like it was the same even when you were playing, not just the future, but the past as well.
Yeah.
John, one of my favorite questions to ask is, who is a player next year that the college basketball world is going to know about? Sincere Carey does not count. He would have been a good candidate last year, maybe, if we were doing this about a year ago. But right. I think this is one of my most favorite questions, because I remember last year, and I've repeated this story a couple times. I had Xavier assistant David Miller on the program, and I asked him, give me a name that we may not know about today, but come around Valentine's Day, we're going to know about. He gave me Souley Boom. And I was like, good Lord, we found out about Souley Boom. John, who is a player right now at Kent State that you can say the world's going to know about him around early February, maybe even sooner than that?
Man, I think I'm going to give you a few.
Please give me a few. Yeah, that also counts.
I think Jalen Sullinger is somebody. If you know Julian Sullinger, his uncle is on our staff. Sat Sullinger is a longtime high school basketball coach in Ohio, and Jared is his uncle, JJ. So basketball family through and through. He was 6th man of the year for us this past season. We are expecting him and have told him to make a significant jump in leadership, accountability. he can score the ball. We're not too worried about that, but things like that. And I think that he's a player that could really make, some jumps. I'm going to tell you, Chris Payton is, just for the excitement factor, an extremely amazing athlete. Really came on really towards the end of the year more for us, the last 15 games. And I think if he continues to work, can make some strides. And, looking down the list, Reggie Bass is a kid coming to us that I think was freshman of the year in our league and is going to also have, a big role. And then Ty Freeman, a kid we signed, Claron Hornbeak. Like I could go through all of us. I think it's going to be, for us to match where we're at. Like all those guys are going to have to, I'm hoping all of them, you hear about them in February, because they're all going to have to make strides, from 1 through 8 for us to be good. So, as far as excitement, Jalen, Chris, Reggie, some guys like that could really make some big jumps. But, there's some other guys on our roster that Claron, Ty Freeman, people like that I think could really help us. So
write the names down. It's all very, very quiet here on the college basketball front today, but these are the names you're going to want to remember where you first heard them. Maybe not first heard them, but before they pop.
I'm hoping you hear about them. If you're not hearing about them, we're in trouble.
We talked a little bit about Coach Senderoff.
Yeah.
And it's not unfair of me to say that you've known him probably 10 plus years or so, around that.
I think we're going on year 10 or 11. Yeah.
Year 10 or 11. He is the winningest and longest tenured coach at Kent State. Yep. John, what do you attribute that to?
I think his ability to get through to players. At the end of the day, as a coach, you can be the smartest guy in the room. You can know more than everyone else. But if your players, if you can't get through to them, if you can't get them to buy in, if you can't get them to understand a message that you're trying to send to them, it doesn't matter what you know. So I think he has a really good ability to pick his spots. I always tell people that, where some days as assistants, we're like, man, we got, and he's just like, it'll come, it's not time yet. And then when it's time, it's time. He holds these guys accountable and goes after them and things like that. I think something really special about him too is at the end of the day, he creates an environment where people can be themselves. At the end, we're in a world where everyone's telling you how to act and who to be. And, he's very accepting of whoever you are. He's just going to ask you to do these things, basketball wise, and he's going to work with you and all these things. It doesn't matter if, you're loud. It doesn't matter if you're quiet. It doesn't matter if you want to sit around and talk to him for 30 minutes. It doesn't matter if you never want to see him. He has a unbelievable ability to bring a group together. And I think, along with being a great offensive mind, along with being, a relentless worker, and along with, just being a good person, like his ability just to care about people and bring 15 people together towards one goal essentially is why any coach is good, but just something I've really learned from him and I think will take with me wherever my career goes.
Kent State has had such a tremendous level of success, sustained success here in the recent years as well, right? And a lot of it goes to Coach Sendy, but obviously guys like you building the foundation. I think those are the stories that should really be applauded there, John. So I want to pivot a little bit here to some quick hitters. Let's have a little fun.
Gotcha.
Selection Sunday. All right. Is it more rewarding as a player to see your name or as a coach to see your team's name?
I'm going to go player just because it's the dream that you've always had, since you're a little kid. I think as a coach, it's a little more antsy as far as like, now we got to prepare. Now we got to, we were watching IU 2 hours after. Compared to when you're a player, you're just like, great, like, let's go play them. There's a ignorance is bliss about it. It's just like, we're just out here having fun. And, yes, we're going to compete. We're going to expect to beat them. We're going to prepare, but it's just a little more, let's just go, let's just enjoy it than when you're a coach trying to prep it.
I really love the visuals as well on Selection Sunday when CBS goes to the different gyms or wherever the watch parties are and the celebration happens. And I'm kind of a sucker for Selection Sunday stories Jon, as a player, what did you guys do, if you can recall? And then what did you do this past year?
So both years, we go to, a local kind of like tavern. They host us. Our school did a pretty good job of like, I can't remember if they did this when I was a player, because it was all, but they kind of like call the guys up one by one, introduce them almost like a game. That way, sincere carry down to the 15th guy gets introduced, and you hang out, you eat, you sit there, and you let them get announced, and then we kind of, because you've just won. The way the MAC tournament is, about 8 hours ago you were done. You were leaving Cleveland from the MAC tournament, winning that, because that goes kind of a couple hours beyond just the finish of the game. So you basically go home, go to sleep, wake up, whenever you wake up, hang out, and go to Selection Sunday and hear your name called. So there's not a whole lot of, you go from winning it to like preparing for another game in about 12 hours. So, I guess that's why I say when you're a coach, it's a little less enjoyable, but at the end of the day, it's all great. When we got announced we were going to California, I remember as a player, we were excited about going to California, because it's a little colder up here in Kent, Ohio. But at the end of the day, Albany did a great job hosting too. It was, both spots were great. The environments were great. And, I think one thing about playing in those environments is there's others games before you. And, for whatever reason, both times we got slotted the latest game of the day, basically.
So that's one thing in common.
Yeah. So everyone just like hanging around waiting along with your fans, and they stay and end up usually rooting for the mid-major team, because they'd love to see somebody knock it off.
Yeah.
So you kind of almost inherit a crowd when it's like that. So that's kind of one cool thing about it.
Well, everyone's looking for the mid-major upset, but when you're playing against UCLA and Indiana, two blue bloods,
yeah,
the crowd is definitely behind you.
And we played UCLA in California, and everyone knows Indiana travels. So it was, even though we were far away from both fan bases, they traveled well.
I'm a little curious to know this as well. Leading up to Selection Sunday and bracketology, we get it like, I don't know, probably 2 months prior with Joe Lunardi, Jerry Palm, all these people doing potential projections. And I'm a nerd over here sitting like, oh man, who's this team potentially going to play? Do you guys do that as coaches also? So when you punch your ticket to the NCAA tournament, you got those 12 hours to prep. Are you speculating like, who could this 4 seed be?
So my answer is both, depending on who you are. I am the type of person, like, looking at that stuff makes me stressed out. Like, we need to beat, Western Michigan on Tuesday. Like, and you guys are in here talking about if they have Toledo, us, Akron, Ohio, Buffalo, or Bowling Green slotted now. Like, at the end of the day, they don't know, because 3 days in Cleveland is what determines it. But our staff has, they look at it. How do you not look at it? If you have Instagram or Twitter, like, it gets popped up, you see it. Everyone on staff tells me like I'm the, I don't want to say pessimistic one, but I'm just like, man, we can't even like.
You're the realist.
I can't even think about the NCAA tournament. Like I'm too stressed out about Tuesday. You know what I mean? So, they'll tell you I didn't enjoy it until the buzzer sounded at Toledo, because that was my scout too, Toledo, for whatever reason. So of course, first year MAC championship scout, I'm up, with 12 hours to prep, because I had Northern Illinois, the quarterfinals, won the game before. And so it was a great experience. Like I said, somehow I always throw myself in the fire one way or another. So I'm hoping I can keep somehow figuring out a way to make it work out.
Yeah, you're doing it. You're doing a hell of a job thus far.
Yeah.
So you may have answered this question earlier when you mentioned the venue that you played, College of Charleston, but I love asking this question as well. Toughest environment you've had to either play or coach in?
Kent Akron game twice a year, every year. I think it's a rivalry people don't know about or understand as much on a national scale, but around this area, that is equal to North Carolina Duke. Like, we're 11 miles from each other. Typically, they're 2 of the top upper programs in the MAC, and they sell out their building when we go there. We sell out our building when they come here. They're both small, not giant arenas. They're big and fans are on top of you. It's, national TV, whether you play here or there twice a year. So that environment, just with, the rivalry, everything like that, is by far the toughest environment I've coached or played in. You can't hear, we put in hand signals for the game because, you got to be able to call stuff. If you're looking for like a venue that's like, I guess, cool or fun, my sophomore year, we played Kansas. I think we were down 4 and they stretched it to 12 in about a 2-minute span in the second half with like 8 minutes to go. And we called timeout and I couldn't hear anything. It's one of those venues. You're driving the bus up the line, they're playing Kent State. It's not like they're playing Kansas, Duke. The line to get in is out the door. Students care about it, everything like that. It was a cool, as far as high major environments go, I think that's probably the best one that I played in, and just remember not being able to, being in the game, not getting blown out and it being loud and everybody being into it. So, but Kent Akron is a rivalry that I think, if you're a college basketball fan, you should pay attention to it because it's a pretty special thing.
Totally agree. I love Kent Akron. I know there's a lot of fireworks between the two teams.
Yeah.
It's high level hoop for sure. And it's funny, I might need to start keeping a tally of the answers that I get, because you might be number 5 who has said Lawrence. I mean, I'm not surprised, right?
Yeah.
But and not only you just saying Lawrence, but the specific example of they went on a run. I couldn't hear anything after that.
Yeah, it was. That's definitely just one I remember being like, we're in the huddle and I'm like, I have no idea what coach is saying. I'm sure he's saying some great stuff, but I can't hear him right now. And, I was in the back, but hopefully the guys in the game could hear him. So,
yeah. In that same vein, what is one arena that you have not been to that you would love to coach in?
Probably Cameron Indoor, just because I hear the same thing. Like, they're on top of you, everybody's almost touching you. I think that'd be a really cool environment to get to go play in. I think we were supposed to play him in COVID or something. And, COVID, we were trying to figure it out and it just never happened. But that'd be a venue that I'd probably like to coach in for sure.
Gotcha. I don't know how feasible it is, but I know we talked about scheduling earlier. If you or Coach Sendy need me to liaise between you and Shire to get this home and home going, let's try and do it. All right.
Home and home, we would definitely love.
And I'm going to get you out of here on this, Jon. I've really enjoyed all of the great stories you've been providing me. This has been a wonderful conversation, but I ask every one of my guests this same question, the same segment. It's called Bring Them Up on Stage. Who is one person in college basketball, or loosely related to college basketball, I don't care, colleague, coach, player, that you would recommend coming on and that I can reach out to and be a pest like I was a pest to you? Who do you think would love to come on here?
I would tell you Jalen Avery. He's an assistant at Stony Brook, played with me at Kent. We have pretty similar personalities, just as far as, loving the game of basketball and things like that. I think he's early in his career. He's even younger than me, I think by 2 years. So already established himself as a really good recruiter. His ability to relate to people is definitely something I think could add some, add a lot of great points to your viewers and stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring up Jalen Avery from Stony Brook.
I love it, Jalen. I'll be reaching out to you for sure.
Yeah, well, let me know if he ignores you. I'll get on him.
I appreciate that, Jon Fleming. Thank you again so much for the time. This was terrific. Best of luck this off season, and I'm looking forward to the upcoming season, even though it's a few months away. Maybe continue to take your rest, but best of luck moving forward, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It was a blast.